Decades-long simmering conflict between Israel and Iran has now escalated into a full-blown war, with both Tel Aviv and Tehran training their ballistic weapons on each other. Iran launched a fresh wave of strikes attacking the Tel Aviv city and the port city of Haifa, killing at least 8 people. Tehran has said that it has no intention of yielding to international calls for de-escalation. Days after Israel's surprise attack on Iran's nuclear facilities triggered the worst confrontation between the long-standing enemies. As per Iran's health ministry, over 220 people, mostly civilians, have been killed in Israeli strikes against the country. At least 70 were women and children. The intelligence chief of Iran's Revolutionary Guard and 2 generals were killed in the attacks. Israeli defense minister has warned Iran that residents will pay the price for Iran's deadly retaliation. Israeli authorities said that at least 14 people in the country, including children, were also killed in strikes over the weekend. Israel's military said it had hit more than 80 targets in Tehran since Saturday, including the defense ministry headquarters. The U.S. embassy in Tel Aviv suffered minor damage from the force of Iranian missile strikes. The U.S. ambassador to Israel confirmed that none of the staff suffered any injury. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he is hopeful that Israel and Iran can strike a deal. However, he has reiterated that his administration will continue its support for Israel. To discuss the conflict, joining us on the show is Matthew Kroenig, Vice President and Senior Director, Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. Matthew, thank you much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, how far do you think the United States is ready to let Israel go in this war with Iran?
Well, I think the United States shares Israel's goal, which is to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities to make sure that Iran cannot build nuclear weapons. According to the early reports, Israel has done damage to the 3 major nuclear facilities, but probably has not destroyed the underground facilities. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that they have days of bombing planned to destroy those facilities. And I think the Trump administration supports that goal. Importantly, the United States hasn't participated in any offensive campaign, any offensive military action against Iran, but has participated on the defensive side, helping Israel protect itself from Iranian missile strikes.
Right. Matthew, what is your sense, if you were to explain our viewers, what is the current support the U.S. is lending Israel, especially in defending itself on a day-to-day basis? How would you explain that?
Well, the United States has been Israel's major supplier of weapons for many years. So a lot of the capabilities that Israel has that it's using, including the F-35 aircraft, were built with the help of the United States, supplied with the help of the United States. And then also when it comes to defense. So as you pointed out in your opening, Iran is has lobbed 200 or so missiles at Israel, has sent drones at Israel. And so Israel has this Iron Dome missile defense system that, again, was built with American support. And U.S. and possibly other regional countries have planes and Air Force pilots shooting down drones and missiles. So again, the United States has supplied Israel with weapons over the years and now is actively participating in Israel's defense.
Right. What would be the threshold for the United States to enter the conflict directly?
Well, one question is how Israel can destroy these underground facilities, especially this facility at Fordow, which is buried under the side of a mountain. Israel probably does not have the ability to destroy that facility using airstrikes alone. Its bunker busters simply don't go far enough. They don't have heavy bombers to carry heavier bombs. Now, don't count Israel out. We've seen them conduct ingenious attacks in the past, including the Hezbollah exploding walkie-talkie attacks. So maybe they have hidden cards up their sleeve. But if not, then really the only way to destroy that facility might be for the United States to come in with its heavier bombers, with its deeper penetrating bunker-busting bombs. I'm guessing the Israelis have asked the United States for that support. So far, the United States hasn't been willing to give it. But maybe at some point, if that's the only way to destroy this last important remaining nuclear facility, perhaps the United States would agree to help Israel with that mission.
Right. Do you also feel the kind of retaliation Iran has made so far has also surprised many around the world. There are, of course, a lot of reports that their ballistic missile launchers, their nuclear facilities have been destroyed. But the kind of retaliation that Iran is showing right now, do you think that it has surprised many as well?
Well, I think people who are paying close attention like me are not surprised. Iran doesn't have a lot of good retaliatory options. Hamas and Hezbollah have been neutralized over the past year or so. And so really Iran's only remaining option was to retaliate with ballistic missiles. So that's exactly what it's done. Iran will have a dilemma, though, because it's running out of these ballistic missiles. And so does it go ahead and shoot them all, which would leave them essentially toothless for any future Israeli attacks, or does it decide to hold some back? But either way, Iran's options here are severely limited.
How long do you expect this conflict to continue? Now, if there is a larger assessment that Iran's military equipment, weaponry, is severely depleted in these current circumstances, can this war expand? And how long can it realistically continue?
What Benjamin Netanyahu has said is that he has a 14-day campaign planned. I guess we're in about day 3. So that suggests another 10 days or so. But again, I think the goal is to destroy the nuclear facilities. And so if that were done earlier, presumably the conflict could stop. Or if at day 14 they haven't succeeded in destroying those facilities, maybe it would continue. The other variable here is negotiation, because President Trump has said that he's still open to negotiation, and that if Iran's supreme leader is willing to agree diplomatically to dismantle his nuclear facilities, that the conflict could stop. So that's my best guess, another 10 days or so. On the question of will the conflict widen, I don't think so. There aren't other countries that really want to get involved in this conflict. I think it is between Israel and Iran. And as I said, Iran is running out of retaliatory options. So I do expect the conflict to de-escalate within about 10 days or so.
Right. To ask you about whether Iran is getting anyone's support behind the scenes, do you think, or is there any sign of foreign support to Iran in this war, either for intelligence, either through weaponry, or any kind of support for that matter?
Well, Iran is a member of this, what some have referred to as the new axis of aggressors. We've seen China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea working more closely together, especially as it relates to Russia's war in Ukraine. Russia has provided Iran with air defense systems in the past. There's been cooperation with China in the past. So far, we haven't seen either side jumping in to help Iran. President Putin made a statement that essentially said that, Iran, you're in a difficult situation, and maybe you should negotiate. He said he agreed with President Trump that Iran and Israel should end the conflict and negotiate. I did see a report that a Chinese plane had landed in Iran, a cargo plane. Were there weapons on that plane? I don't know. That could be a game changer if China decided to enter on Iran's side and turn this into a U.S.-China proxy war. And then, of course, I think China and Russia will defend Iran diplomatically at the UN and elsewhere.
Right. I would also like to ask you about, while we're talking about the war expanding, in India, there is a big worry about what happens to oil prices. Now, through the Strait of Hormuz, you have about 20% of global oil supply moving. Would this be a worry for the United States as well, that if Iran were to stop or close the Strait of Hormuz as a retaliatory measure, and as the last measure, we're hearing that this would probably be the last card that Ayatollah Khamenei may have?
Well, anytime there's conflict in the Middle East, there's worry about disruptions to oil supplies. And so that causes oil traders to increase the price they're willing to pay for oil. And I think we're already seeing some of those effects in the market. But you're absolutely right that if there's a real significant disruption, then that would have an even bigger impact. Iran does have the option of harassing and attacking ships in the region, and also of, in worst case, closing the Strait of Hormuz, which would cut off a large portion of the world's oil supply to global markets. I don't think Iran is likely to do that, though, for a couple of reasons. One, it would hurt Iran's own situation. It's Iran's major source of revenue is energy exports, so it would be cutting off its own sources of revenue. And second, many other countries around the world, including China, would be upset if Iran were to cause a major disruption to energy supply like that. And China and others are countries that Iran is probably counting on for diplomatic support. So never say never. It is a dangerous and uncertain moment. But my guess is that we won't see that kind of significant disruption to oil supplies for those reasons.
Right. Now, the U.S. was engaged with Iran in talks for a nuclear deal. There doesn't seem to be any possibility of having talks in these circumstances. Would it have been better for the U.S. to actually have waited for the talks to reach at least some level of maturity before the strike was done?
I don't think so. We've been talking for more than 20 years. And in fact, my first job in the U.S. government in 2004 was working on the Iran nuclear issue. So we've been talking for 20 years, and the key issue is uranium enrichment. Iran does not need the ability to enrich uranium for a purely civilian program. The only reason it would need that is to have the option to build nuclear weapons. And so Iran has been unwilling to shut down its enrichment program completely. Even the Obama-era nuclear deal, important to point out, allowed Iran to enrich uranium, and the limits in that deal expired over time. So it wasn't a permanent solution. It just kicked the can down the road. The Trump administration, I think correctly, was insisting on zero enrichment. And the Iranians said that that was a red line for them, that they would never agree to that. So I don't think the negotiations were going anywhere. And we were running out of time. Some of the technical analysis I've seen said that Iran's dash time to one bomb's worth of weapons-grade material was 2.5 days. So this really was a last resort. This really was now or never.
All right. My final question to you would be, where would this leave geopolitical alignments in the region? We have seen the power, the strength of Iran's proxies having been severely reduced over the last 2 years through a wave of attacks by Israel. Having said that, if this war between Iran and Israel escalates into a larger conflict and it continues for the next few months, what are some of the geopolitical alignments for the U.S. that we are going to see in the region?
Well, I think there's huge upside in terms of the geopolitical situation, and Israel is redrawing the map of the region. As you were pointing out, a year or so ago, the biggest dangers in the region came from Iran, its ballistic missile stockpile, its nuclear program, its support to terror and proxy groups throughout the region, and Iran's ally, Assad in Syria. But now Hamas has been decimated, Hezbollah has been decimated, Assad is gone, Iran's ballistic missile program is being destroyed, and it's expending its remaining missiles, and its nuclear program is on the verge of being destroyed. So I think this could make the Middle East a much more peaceful and secure region, and it would allow the United States to pivot to Asia, focus more on the threat from China, which is something that it's wanted to do for a long time. A nuclear-armed Iran and the threats that Iran poses would keep the United States tied down in the Middle East. But with Israel solving these security threats for Washington, I do think it allows Washington to finally move away from the Middle East and focus on other threats.
All right. Matthew Kroenig, thank you so much for joining us here on Global Lens, giving us your view on the escalating tensions between Israel and Iran and what they mean for the region and geopolitical alignments as well. Thanks once again for being with us. Let's move on and